Ever since the Europeans found more direct trading routes with Asia via the sea, Central Asia lost a great deal of its power and wealth. And of course they failed to modernize, but in the 19th century many powerful nations started to struggle for influence here in Central Asia. Most notably was the Great Game, and this was when Britain was fearful that the Russians would encroach into Central Asia and threaten India. This in fact dictated a great deal of British policy in the 19th century. For instance, they formed an alliance with Japan in the early 20th century at least, and many British also subscribed to the theory put forward by a geographer named Mackinder. In short, he said that Central Asia was the geographical pivot of history. In short, this theory said that Central Asia and Eastern Russia could not be taken by a maritime power like Britain or France or the United States. So whoever controlled this region of the world controlled a lot of the world's resources and would be unstoppable. So they feared if Russia developed their infrastructure they would be unbeatable, and they also feared a rising Asian power like China or Japan taking this region as well, and they also feared Germany taking Russia. Of course, Britain and Russia didn't go to war over Central Asia, and Russia ended up annexing the region. But the region was still highly sought after by various groups and intellectuals. For instance, in the 19th century, an Afghan named Afghani put forward the idea of pan-islamism. Now, initially it didn't have a great deal of influence because, more often than not, the pan-Arabism in the Middle East was the more dominant force. But in more recent years, it has gained a large following. For instance, after the fall of the Soviet Union, the Hizb ut-Tahrir group was formed, and these are an Islamic group, obviously, who have a large following in Uzbekistan, notably, but they also fought against the Tajik government during the civil war. And there's also the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, which wants to create an Islamic state, so of course they have allied themselves with ISIS. But going back to the 20th century briefly, after the Russian Revolution, a large revolt in Central Asia broke out. It was called the Basmachi Revolt. And what's interesting for this story anyway is that Enver Pasha, the leader of the Young Turks Revolution, got involved. Now, Enver Pasha was initially trusted by the Soviets, but once he travelled to Central Asia, he started to lead the rebels because he had plans on uniting the Turkic nations of Central Asia with the new Republic of Turkey. However, the Jadids, the intellectuals in Central Asia, the sort of reformist intellectuals in Central Asia, didn't really agree with his idea of a Turkic union. So once the rebellion was put down and the Soviet Union created new nation states, pan-Turkism sort of died out in Central Asia and nationalism took over. So it's unlikely that a Turkic state is going to be created in the near future, but a Turkic union was created not so long ago, and that includes Azerbaijan, Turkey and Kazakhstan. And finally there was one other movement to try and take some states in Central Asia, and that's pan-Iranism. Now this does make a little bit of sense, after all the Tajiks are Persian, but this was created more in response to pan-Turkism and pan-Arabism, and it never really got off the ground.